Have you ever ruined a perfectly good, expensive cut of steak with a terrible, overpowering sauce? Well, today we are fixing that culinary tragedy once and for all. I've spent the last few weeks rigorously testing the most popular, highly rated steak sauces and demi-glaces currently on the market, cooking and pouring them over countless cuts of beef just to see which ones actually deserve a permanent spot on your dining table. By the end of this video, you are going to know exactly which sauce takes the absolute crown, and honestly, the #1 spot completely surprised me. 6. La Sauce Classic Demi-Glace Sauce. I was genuinely excited to try this one out, because let's be real, making a proper demi-glace at home takes hours of roasting beef bones, chopping mirepoix, and slowly simmering stock. So a quick, ready-to-go pouch seemed like an absolute dream come true for a weeknight dinner. You just pop it in the microwave or heat it on the stove, and theoretically, you have a rich, velvety sauce ready to pour over your perfectly seared filet. The convenience factor here is undeniably fantastic. I mean, on a busy Tuesday night, when you just want a decent steak dinner without playing French chef for 3 long hours, ripping open a foil packet is pretty incredibly appealing. The packaging is sleek and attractive, and the initial aroma when you heat it up actually smells quite authentic, with lovely hints of roasted beef, herbs, and red wine gently hitting your nose. But well, here is where things start to fall apart for me a little bit. Once you actually taste it, the flavor profile is just overwhelmingly salty. You know, when you heavily salt a good steak before searing it to build a crust, you expect the sauce to complement that seasoning, not aggressively compete with it. I found myself reaching for my water glass way too often because the sodium levels just overpowered the natural flavor of the beef. Another thing that really bothered me was the texture. A true, traditional demi-glace should coat the back of a spoon and have a rich, glossy, almost gelatinous mouthfeel from the collagen in the bones. But this one felt a bit watery and thin in comparison. It just ran right off my sirloin and pooled sadly at the bottom of the plate, which honestly defeats the whole purpose of a luxurious finishing sauce. 5. Steakhouse Seasoning. This product caught my eye because it promises a cool dual-action approach to flavoring your meat, a dry rub to build the crust, and a wet sauce to finish it off. It sounds like a complete powerhouse combination that should, in theory, knock your socks off and give you a complete restaurant meal in one package. I started off by applying the dry seasoning blend to a nice, thick, well-marbled New York strip. The rub has a really decent porciness to it, with highly visible chunks of cracked black pepper, dehydrated garlic, and coarse onion, which I usually absolutely love. It adhered well to the meat and created a fairly decent, crunchy crust in my hot cast-iron skillet, setting up a solid foundation for the meal. However, the wet sauce itself is where the whole tasting experience took a bit of a severe nosedive for me. I mean, I poured it out into a ramekin, and it looked reasonably promising, but the taste was just aggressively generic. It honestly reminded me of a cheap, mass-produced, fast food barbecue sauce that is just desperately masquerading as a premium steakhouse condiment. You know, it had this intensely artificial smoke flavor that completely overpowered the natural, grassy beefiness of the steak. Instead of enhancing the hard sear and the rich fat of the New York strip, it completely masked it, leaving this weird, lingering metallic aftertaste on my tongue that I just couldn't shake. It felt like a total disservice to a good piece of beef. So, while the seasoning portion of this 2-pack is completely fine and definitely usable on its own, the sauce severely drags down the overall value of the purchase. 4. St. Elmo Steakhouse. If you've ever traveled to Indianapolis, you probably know the legendary, historic reputation of St. Elmo, and this set tries to bring that iconic old-world restaurant experience right into your home kitchen. It includes a beautiful bottle of their famous seasoning and a bottle of their house sauce. Let me just say, unboxing this felt like opening a highly curated present for meat lovers. The packaging is sturdy, elegant, and classic, making it an incredibly thoughtful gift for the dedicated grill master in your life. I immediately tested the seasoning on a beautiful bone-in ribeye, and the results from the grill were genuinely impressive right out of the gate. The flavor profile of the rub is beautifully balanced, with just the exact right ratio of celery seed, paprika, and sharp black pepper. It doesn't scream for attention, but rather quietly and confidently elevates the outer crust of the steak to a professional restaurant tier level. You know, it's one of those magical blends that makes you look like a much better, more experienced cook than you actually might be. Then there is the steak sauce included in the set. It leans slightly heavily into the horseradish territory, which gives it a very distinct, sharp, sinus-clearing kick. I mean, if you love a bit of intense nasal heat with your prime rib or your steak belts, this is going to be an absolute home run for your palate. It ranks at number 4 simply because that intense horseradish zing isn't for absolutely everyone, and it can be a tiny bit polarizing if you or your guests prefer a sweeter or more traditionally savory profile. 3. Blues Hog Steak and Chop Sauce. Now, the Blues Hog brand is practically considered royalty in the competitive barbecue world, so my expectations were sky high for this specific bottle. Let me tell you, it completely lived up to the massive hype and then some. When I first opened the bottle and gave it a deep smell, I was instantly hit with this incredible, complex aroma of dark brown sugar, tangy Worcestershire, and a subtle, bright hint of citrus. It's thick, it's delightfully rich, and it pours out with this gorgeous, dark mahogany color that just looks incredibly appetizing, resting on a warm plate. The taste is an absolute culinary revelation. It strikes this perfect, harmonious balance between sweet and savory, with a tiny, subtle, peppery kick at the very end that lingers beautifully on the palate without burning. I tested this on some thick grilled pork chops as well as a lean flank steak, and it completely transformed both dishes into masterpieces. You know, what I really appreciate the most about Blues Hog is how wonderfully well it glazes over fire. If you brush a little bit of this onto your meat during the last few minutes of high-heat grilling, it caramelizes into this sticky, savory crust that is simply out of this world. I mean, it practically turns your humble backyard into a 5-star, award-winning smokehouse. It's incredibly versatile too. Honestly, I found myself dipping my leftover French fries into it, and I wouldn't judge anyone for slathering it heavily on a smashed burger. It's a beautifully crafted artisanal sauce that deeply respects the meat while bringing a massive wave of flavor, easily and confidently securing its spot in our top 3. 2. St. Elmo Steak Sauce. While the gift set at number 4 gave us a great taste of their flavor universe, this specific, dedicated bottle of their signature dark sauce really deserves its own massive spotlight. It is an absolute masterpiece of condiment engineering. If you are terribly tired of those incredibly sweet, syrupy grocery store sauces that just taste like glorified artificial ketchup, this is your ultimate savior. St. Elmo delivers a deeply savory, umami-rich punch that is strictly meant for adults who actually want to taste the nuances of their beef. It has a beautiful, robust earthiness to it that commands respect. The consistency is absolutely perfect, not too thick and gloppy, yet not too thin and runny. It clings to every single bite of steak perfectly, without overwhelming the delicate texture of the meat itself. I paired this with a beautifully cooked medium-rare tenderloin, and well, it was like a match made in culinary heaven. I mean, you can really taste the supreme quality of the ingredients here in every drop. There are sharp notes of aged vinegar, a deep savory soy-like background, and just enough spice to aggressively wake up your taste buds. It's complex and sophisticated, mimicking exactly what you would get poured out tableside at an expensive, high-end chop house. Honestly, it was a razor-thin margin between this and the number 1 spot today. St. Elmo is a flawless, timeless classic, and keeping a bottle of this in your fridge door instantly upgrades your lazy weeknight steak dinners. You know, it's just one of those legendary, iconic sauces that actually earns every bit of its stellar reputation. 1. Primal Kitchen Organic. I have to admit, I was incredibly skeptical about this one at first glance. Usually, when a food product screams organic, sugar-free, and paleo-friendly on the label, it means they have compromised heavily on the actual taste. Boy, was I wrong. This sauce absolutely blew my mind and shattered all of my expectations. Primal Kitchen has somehow managed to capture all the deep, tangy, savory magic of a traditional old-school steak sauce without using a single drop of refined sugar, artificial sweeteners, or junky, unpronounceable preservatives. It's incredibly clean, yet astonishingly flavorful. The base is carefully crafted with organic crushed tomatoes and rich balsamic vinegar, which gives it this bright, zesty tang that cuts through the rich, heavy fat of a prime ribeye absolutely flawlessly. It practically cleanses your palate with every single bite, making you want to keep going back for more and more. What really sets it completely apart for me is the brilliant addition of organic tamarind and organic ginger. These specific ingredients add a gorgeous layer of complexity and a subtle warm spice that is just totally addictive. I poured it generously over my steak, and then I literally found myself licking the spoon clean. It is genuinely that good. Not only does it taste far better than 99% of the sauces out there on the market, but you also feel truly great eating it because the ingredients are so incredibly clean and wholesome. Well, you know, when a healthy alternative actually tastes wildly superior to the traditional heavy hitters, you know you found a true, undeniable winner.